Healthcare, looking after you always. Proud sponsors of Real Health with Karl Henry.
Hello and welcome to Real Health with me, Karl Henry, in association with Real Health Karl. Folks, for this week's show, I'm focusing on the importance of the mind over matter, and having the right mindset can really make the difference in living a healthy life. Over the course of the last couple of months, and especially now, the mindset is more important than ever before. I'm delighted to be joined by cognitive behavioural therapist Niamh Connolly of TheMindGym.ie to get some insights and advice on dealing with uncertainty, developing your mind properly, and CBT strategies to help you deal with life stresses and strains. Niamh, welcome to Real Health. How's it going?
Hey, Carol. Great. Thank you very much for having me on.
Is it fair to say that the mind has never been under more pressure than over the last 6-ish months or thereabouts? And as we look to the future, I think even more so in terms of uncertainty, in terms of fear of the unknown, in terms of everything that's happening now over the next couple of weeks, facing into September if the schools go back. Anxiety, depression, mental health, and mental exercise and mental wellness have never been more important or more prevalent than they are now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we're under more pressure than we've ever been in terms, just exactly as you're saying, Carl, the uncertainty. I would have lots of interactions and communications online, and people have said to me they preferred nearly the full lockdown because at least we knew where we stood. Whereas now there's so much it's not that there's lack of clarity, the government are doing their best, but it's just things are changing literally day to day. And as a species, as our mindset, we don't like uncertainty. We love knowing what's coming next. You'd see it in children. They love, what do we do next? What do we do next? We love routine and structure. That's what we kind of thrive on, most of us. And that's probably how our primitive brain works best, knowing what's coming. If you think back to the caveman running around, he needed to know where his next food was coming from. He needed to know that he had shelter. So certainty created and equaled safety. It equals survival. So when we're in that mode, we feel safe, we feel reassured. And then when things shift, we kind of, what's next? And it's that lack of certainty can bring up all kinds of difficulties for people.
And let's chat about anxiety. I suppose I always like to ask people, no matter who I chat to, in terms of what that is, to identify it for our listeners. Because I think it's really important to identify both that, and we'll chat about depression maybe a little bit later, but to identify them and say, okay, well, here's what anxiety is, here's how it looks, and here's how it kind of can manifest itself from people who might be listening in.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because I think no matter who you ask, you'll get a different answer. You'll get a psychiatrist will give you a different answer, a medical doctor will give you a different answer. From a psychotherapy point of view, I like to use the analogy of a weighing scales. So anxiety would be equivalent to risk or danger being exceeding your ability to cope or manage that risk. So it's about a threat of some sort. So when those two things are out of kilter, we become anxious. So you could be in a risky situation, but think I have the resources to manage that and not be anxious. Or you may have very few resources, but no risk, and equally you won't be anxious. But when you have elevated risk without the matching coping skills, that's your kind of recipe for disaster. That's when we are inclined to get anxious. And anxious is different again in every person. We're inclined to think of anxiety as, again, it comes under the headline of kind of a mental illness or a mental disorder. In fact, it's a very physical condition, because if you say to somebody, what happens to you when you get anxious? Like if I said to you, Carl, when you get anxious, how do you feel, or how do you know you're anxious? What would you say?
Oh, this is turning into a one-on-one session. I'm intrigued. I check my phone more, definitely. I get jumpy. My sleep is affected in the key thing for me is, and I always want it at my peak, is I can't exercise. I actually can't train because of the fact that I associate it with work, I presume. I'm not quite sure why. But that would be the extreme of it.
Yes, you get stuck in a loop. Yeah, and that tends to happen where we go round and round in the same circle. We kind of cling to things that we've done before, but when they're not working, we don't recognize, because that's another sign of anxiety, is this kind of like a brain freeze, where, normally, rationally, you'd look in at yourself and you go, Carl, exercise is what, really works a treat for you. You should go and, do something. But when we get into that mode, we stop thinking rationally. We're thinking from the primitive part of the brain, and it's all about emotive. It's all about the feelings. You might get a knot in your stomach. Your heart might start pounding. A lot of people describe this pressure in their chest. So there's a lot of physical symptoms that are associated with anxiety, and that can become part of the problem itself, that people begin to fear the physical signs of anxiety. They're afraid of getting overwhelmed, or they think because their heart is racing that something is wrong, rather than thinking my heart is racing because I'm feeling anxious about something. So it's about kind of teasing out what are the thoughts that are going through your mind as you're feeling that anxiety.
Okay, so if, for people listening in, when they feel those the anxious kind of triggers, it's about looking at what you're getting anxious about, what you're thinking at the time when you're getting anxious, and maybe writing them down or kind of assessing those a little bit.
Absolutely. And you've really hit one very important skill, which is writing things down. When we're anxious, when we're upset, worried, and stressed, again, it's the primitive part of the brain. It's very basic. It's black or white. It doesn't kind of see nuances. It just clings on to, risk, and it doesn't get into much detail. When you pause and you pay attention and you spot those physical symptoms in yourself, like I was describing, and you say, okay, this is a sign, this is my body giving me information that I need to do something. And if you pause and slow down, and maybe even just the fact that you're recognizing those signs, that will help bring the rational part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex, where we do all our kind of reasoned thinking, where we work things out. That will help kind of bring that online. And then stopping and writing it down kind of pauses, it slows everything down, and it sends a message back to the primitive brain. Oh, hang on a second, Karl is writing, therefore he's not at risk, he's not in imminent danger, or he wouldn't be sitting there with a pen, he'd be sprinting to get away from whatever the danger was. So you get a nice bottom up message. The body sends a message back to the brain. I'm writing things down, I'm slowing down, I'm reflecting, therefore things are okay. I can kind of turn off the fight or flight, the alert risk mode. So you've hit on some really good stuff already, yeah.
And I suppose one of the things, just from a personal perspective, reading the news, looking online, anxiety has become something that I think has become potentially more visibly prevalent, if not more prevalent, especially in a younger generation. And again, when it comes to schools going back and just our younger listeners, anxiety is something that comes up time and time and time and time again. Is that down to a lack of coping mechanisms or coping skills or education around coping skills for anxiety? Is that linked to that? And that maybe from an educational perspective, things we need to do more of, such as we see on your Instagram page, is about, it's content about coping skills and mechanisms to learn how to cope that a little bit better with the pressures of life.
I think what can happen is we can lean, again, it's to understand these are kind of very subconscious, these are very instinctual responses. They're not really thought out. We're not deciding to overreact. It's our primitive brain thinking that it's keeping us safe. So I think how we nourish ourselves is really important. And that's not just food and water. That's what are we reading? What are we feeding ourselves every day? What news are we listening to? Like at the start of COVID, I was watching every 6 o'clock news bulletin. I was hooked on those kind of live reports. But it just starts to feel more and more overwhelming. It starts to feel more and more serious. I started to feel less and less like I could make any difference or do anything about this. So I just decided, you know what? I don't need to read, there's one update I get online, and that's enough. I don't need to know any more than that. And this is where we need to think about our media, and social media in particular. If you're just looking at things that are very, headliney and, kind of not helpful, you're being bombarded then with these messages, and the brain, again, the primitive brain will go, oh, hang on a second, safety, I have to protect this person, we need to panic, or it's not taking it rationally. So I think in terms of younger people, think about what you're looking at, think about what you're feeding yourself. Do you feel better or worse after it? Is this helping you stay calm and getting you prepared for September, or is it throwing you into a ball of worry and dread? And if it's the second, then rethink what you're looking at. I think that's important.
Okay, so it's filtering your social media to ensure that it's a positive experience as opposed to a negative experience. And I think that certainly in the likes of Instagram, that's particularly important, because what you see time and time again is an influencer in a perfect life and a perfect situation, and it's all wonderful and fabulous, and they look really healthy and all the rest of it, where it's filtered and altered to look that way. And it's crucial to be able to identify those things.
Yes. Yeah, it's everything that we're seeing online is curated. Everything is presented in its best possible light. And we all do that, and there's nothing wrong with that. As long as we know, it's like the swan floating across the water, that there's legs going hell for leather underneath, and we're not seeing every aspect of it. One of the things that we can fall prone to, and it's something I was posting about last week, are cognitive distortions. So our thoughts can kind of work against us. Again, it comes from the primitive brain. And it's like a thinking sin, or an unhelpful thinking habit. And a very common one of those is something called the mental filter. Our brains are primed to react much faster to negative information than to constructive or good information. And that's a safety thing. Again, if you're about to step out, across the street, and if there's, a bike whizzing past, and you stop and work out, I wonder, should I step back out of the way? Boom, you'll be hit. Whereas you act first, think later. That's your primitive brain. It's wonderful. It has kept the human race going for thousands, hundreds of thousands of years. But when it comes to trying to sift through information, it can latch onto the negative information first. So you could listen to 9 or go through 9 good accounts or positive accounts or ones that make you feel better. And then you'll feel one, it's the same yourself. If you get feedback from clients, if you've worked with people training all day, you've 10 clients, 9 of them are fantastic, great. The 10th one, Karl, I thought you were rubbish today. I really didn't like the program. It's doing nothing for me. You go home. Someone says to you, well, Karl, how was your day? What are you going to respond? And it's that one negative one, and it'll get in on us. And it's not a conscious thing that we're doing. It's our leaning. That is our primitive brain thinking that it's keeping us safe by alerting us and kind of tilting us to look at negative information. But as long as we know that, we can tilt ourselves back and go, okay, yes, that guy was a pain in the ass and blah, 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 but I had 9 really good clients, and you're keeping your thinking balanced. You're seeing the bigger picture. You're stepping back, whereas the primitive brain is all about zoning in at as little information as possible, whereas up here, the rational brain is like much bigger picture. It can manage a lot more information. So being aware of those thinking styles is really important as well.
Tell us about the common things you've seen over the course of the last couple of months with clients in terms of issues that you've seen that they presented with, and tips and kind of tools to improve or to help those issues.
One of the things that's been quite interesting is the CBT. I'm not doing different CBT. I'm not doing COVID CBT in a way. I'm just doing the same strategies and techniques, but kind of modifying them slightly for maybe slightly different circumstances. It's one of the strengths of CBT. So if you came to me maybe following an accident and you had anxiety or PTSD or something like that after, a particular situation, we went through particular skills and techniques. And then the following year, you had a different stressful situation, you would go back and use the same toolkit. You can mold and blend and change the same tools and use them. And that's one of the strengths of CBT. It's shown, say when it's been used for depression, it is more effective than medication in terms of relapse prevention. So if you've learned skills and techniques that tackle maybe the underlying cause, you'll be able to repeat them. You'll be able to keep then repeated bouts of depression at bay because you spot the signs earlier and you know what to do.
I actually want to just jump in on CBT for a minute. So lots of our listeners will have heard about it, read about it, but they actually won't really know what it is. So let's put it right back to basics. On a very basic level, what is CBT?
It's a type of psychotherapy. It is different to most psychotherapies in that it's quite directive. So a series of protocols have been put together over 50, nearly 60 years at this stage. They've been scientifically tested. They have been proven to help in the use within particular mental disorders such as anxiety, depression, varieties of anxiety, OCD, PTSD, postnatal depression, but in the bigger realm as well of stress. Mood is another huge one where it's very effective. So if you came to me and said, Niamh, I think I have depression, I would assess and go through and do a very in-depth discussion with you about your background, current situation that you're in, and then we would together, because it's a collaborative process, I know CBT, but you know you, we would work together to establish goals. So Karl, in 3 months' time, what would you like to be able to be doing or not be doing? And once you meet those goals, it's finished, you know, so it's time set as well. It's not something that goes on for years and years and years. You get your set of skills and then you take them with you. The goal of CBT is to teach the client to become their own therapist, so they can spot things earlier, like I was saying, and then they have the tools and skills required. Because if somebody comes back to me maybe 2 or 3 years later and saying, I'd like a top-up session, or I'd like just to revisit, one of the first things I'll say is, did you keep up your CBT skills? Did you keep up the practices that we had put in place? And a revision usually is all that's needed. So it's quite structured. There is some writing involved, not essays or anything like that, but there is recording, like things, jotting down things during the week. Somebody would bring me back feedback the following week. But again, that adds to they have a folder then at the end of their 8 weeks or 10 weeks or whatever it is, of really helpful resources. Week 1, we did this. Week 2, we did that. So it's great value for money. You know, it really helps in the long term as well as in the short term. Another thing actually just about CBT, it gets a bad rap that it is nothing to do with a person's past. And that couldn't be further from the truth. One of the ways we work is using formulation. So often when somebody comes and says, I keep doing this and I don't know why I'm driving myself cracked, I know I shouldn't be. There is, we would use the concept of core beliefs, where we have beliefs about ourselves that evolve over the formative years, so up to 25. So I could have a belief that I'm not good enough, or I could have a belief that I'm a failure, and we would work through to identify what that person's core belief is, how it came about, and then work on ways of changing, kind of re-evaluating that belief system. And that can be an amazing piece of work to do. It's real aha. People go, oh my God, I get it now, I get it. And it's a really nice piece of work. It's on one page and it really simplifies. I think that's one of the things CBT does. It simplifies what can be complicated and messy situations. It clarifies them and it makes them therefore easier then to tackle.
Okay, so it's very much taking people a step back, analysing a situation, identifying core values, core beliefs, and then skilling you up for a certain target over a period of time.
Yes.
Very cool. Let's chat about mind over matter. I'm intrigued by this, and that mindset is really important in times of stress, and particularly now, and having that clear mindset is crucial.
Yeah, I think one of the things that we forget is how much our approach and our thoughts before a situation can either dictate or influence that situation. There's a famous phrase, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And you kind of have to say that twice. You go, well, and it's like you know, the way, if you get up and on a Monday morning and you're in bad form and you go, oh, today is going to be awful. And, you know, I'm just not able for it and I can't face into another week. Sod's law, you know, you're going to have a bad day. Again, your filter is on for the negative. It is setting you to look for the negative, and by God, you'll find it. You know, the way if somebody, people would report, you know, attention bias. When they think of something, they're far more likely to see it. There's reports of people when they're, you know, trying to get pregnant and they can't, everyone seems to be pregnant. It's that idea that what we look for, we find. So our mindset is hugely important. And there's amazing, very interesting research into this under the placebo effect and the nocebo effect, which is less known. Most people will have heard of the placebo effect, the positive effect we can get from taking a substance that we think has an active ingredient. But the nocebo is equally important. And a kind of a subset of that, and it's very much to do with mindset, is anticipation. There's a very interesting piece, research done on anticipatory dread, where they took people and they asked them if they were to be given like a heat on their hand that would be 4 out of 10 painful, right? So that was the rating. And they said, you can have 4 out of 10, you can have 4 out of 10 pain on your hand in 15 minutes, or you can have 6 out of 10 pain on your hand straight away. And guess what people chose?
4?
6?
6.
Yeah, the vast majority of people in that study decided to get it over with. So rather than sitting and waiting for 15 minutes and thinking about the 4, this seemed to be that anticipatory dread seemed to add more pain onto that score. So, okay. And often you're sitting waiting for something to happen. It's that knot in your stomach. Like I was sitting waiting and I was ready to go at 5 o'clock and I went, okay. And then as I waited and waited, I started to get a knot in my stomach. And you're going, what's that about? It's this you start thinking again that we think it's, top down. An awful lot of this is kind of subconscious. Our brain will go, oh, but what if? Oh, but what if something, So we lean into the worst case scenario. And when we're in that frame of mind, we're not as capable. We're limited in our responses. We're inclined to, again, act first and think later. It's like, have you ever been asked to do something and you go, yeah, and then, geez, why did I agree to do that? And you're kind of, we say things and we do things before we work out, is this best for me? So it's this anticipation. There's been studies done as well on people in hospitals in terms of pain relief, that when somebody has been in pain and they're waiting for their next pain relief, and the nurse says to them, I'll get that for you now. And there's a few minutes while she goes to get the medication, they've seen through brain scanning, which it's incredible, the person's pain activation, the area of the brain's associated with pain activation, start activating prior to receiving the medication. So the anticipation of the relief of pain can bring about a lessening of the pain. It doesn't get rid of it, but it can ease it. And that's the thing I think about mindset. Things are really difficult right now. There's nothing that we can do to get out of this situation. If we're not abiding by the rules, we're putting people at risk. If we are abiding by the rules, we're compromised and limiting ourselves in terms of work and socializing, all of that. So either way, and that's why positive thinking doesn't work. It's about realistic thinking. So this is a difficult situation. It's a kind of foundation that we're all on right now. But if we start dreading it and imagining worst case scenarios and thinking about how bad this could be and focusing on what we can lose, on top of that, you're adding a layer of mental distress on top of an existing difficult situation. And that's the piece where mindset comes in. You can manage that mental distress. You can minimize that, keep it to as little as possible. Acknowledge how difficult the situation is. It's not about pretending. It's not about putting your head in the sand, but it's about not going into a bad situation before it has happened. Because this again goes back to the primitive brain. You're sitting at home watching a scary movie on your lovely sofa. You jump out of your skin at the scary bit. Why? What's that about?
So it's the music, or it's a sensation, or it's how you're bought into the movie. Yeah, of course you have. Yeah.
Primitive brain does not know that Jaws is not going to actually jump out. And that's how crazy it is. Hollywood knows this. That's why they do the dun 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 music, because they get that we respond very quickly to any sort of a negative stimulus. They love that. So that's why if we're gone into imagining awful situations, our brain will react as if those awful situations are already happening. Have you ever dreaded a situation and been really up in a heap about it and it never happened?
Oh, plenty of times.
Umpteen, sure, who doesn't know that? Exactly, we all have. But then you go, oh, for God's sake, what was the point? But you're as nervous as if the bad thing was going to happen. And it's like, we don't need that. Things are difficult enough for us right now. We don't need to be having imaginary distress or anticipatory distress on top of what's already really difficult. And we're facing into a winter, the night's going to get shorter. At least it's daylight now. I know the weather's not great. But, we have tough times ahead. It's really important that we are trying to kind of insulate ourselves and prepared and be ready for this, and tuning into our coping skills rather than tuning into what we will be struggling with. It's a perception. It's what way you decide you're going to look at it.
And I suppose if I have to sum that up a little bit, it's pulling away from the what if
Absolutely
wordage of what if something happens, or what if the numbers go to whatever, or what if we're in a lockdown, or what if whatever, and replacing that with more positive words and more positive things to look for. Realistic.
Because if you're saying to somebody in a really difficult situation to think positive, that's almost like it's invalidating. They're probably very valid worries and concerns. It's not, this isn't positive. This is not good that we're in COVID and nobody's really sure what's coming next. So let's be honest about that. But realistically, look back, if you had said to all of ourselves in March, do you think you'd be coping okay if we're still at this in August? We would go, oh my God, no way, I wouldn't be able for that. And we look at people who go through really difficult situations and you go, oh my God, I don't know how you did it. And people answer, well, I had no choice. You know, no one chooses struggle. No one chooses to suffer. But we have incredible strength and resilience. And when we only focus on the difficulty, we lose sight of that strength and resilience. If you look back at what we have already achieved in this country, it's fantastic. We made such great strides. Things are gone a little bit jelly at the moment, but we'll pull it back. You know, we're going to get things back on track again as much as we can. So I think that's the stuff to focus on. People have done incredibly well with their kids. They've done incredibly well in jobs. You know, we're doing our best. So I think that's something that's really important, to keep the focus on the realistic, balanced and helpful. That may not be positive. Positive isn't always helpful, but being realistic is.
Niamh, on that note, thank you so much for joining us on Real Health. If people want to find out more about you and where you are, tell us what your Instagram handles are and all of that.
The Mind Gym on Instagram. The website is TheMindGym.ie. And just drop me an email. I've lots of free resources. I've lots of worksheets and stuff that will probably back up some of the things we were talking about there today. If anyone needs anything, feel free to drop me a line. Niamh at TheMindGym.ie is the email.
Fantastic. Niamh, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode.
Thank you, Carl. It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Folks, I really hope you enjoyed today's episode of Real Health. Some really good, solid, backed up science content there from Niamh. Really crucial over the course of the next couple of weeks and months. We're going to need all the mind gym workouts that we possibly can. So apply those tips and tools and to make a huge difference to your approach to the next couple of weeks and months. As ever, you know where we are. We're at Karl Henry PT on Twitter and on Instagram. Real Health at independent.ie. And as always, don't forget to rate and review. We do love those. So much appreciated. Have a fantastic week. Apply those tips and tools and we'll see you next week.
Leia Healthcare, looking after you always. Proud sponsors of Real Health with Karl Henry.